She didn't scream. Couldn't. Her vocal cords had frozen the moment the metal kissed her skin, the moment she realized that the two identical men standing before her, the ones she'd married exactly 48 hours ago, were not the businessmen their tailored suits suggested. They were predators. And she was trapped between them in a bedroom that suddenly felt less like luxury and more like a gilded cage with the door sealed shut. "Which one of us do you want tonight?" The man on her left spoke, his voice smooth as silk over steel. His name was Min-jun. Or was it Ji-hoon? She still couldn't tell them apart except for the temperature in their eyes. This one's gaze burned. "That's not fair, Hyung," the other one said, pressing closer from behind until Thandi could feel his breath on her neck. "She doesn't know us well enough to choose. Maybe we should help her decide." The gun lowered. Thandi's knees buckled with relief so intense she tasted copper. Strong hands caught her before she hit the marble floor, 4 hands, belonging to 2 men who moved in perfect synchronization, as if they shared one mind split between 2 devastatingly beautiful bodies. "Easy, sweetheart," the warmer one murmured, and Thandi finally placed him. "Ji-hoon." The one who smiled. "We're not going to hurt you." The gun wasn't even loaded. Min-jun's jaw tightened. She needed to understand. Understand what? Thandi's voice cracked, but anger was replacing fear now, hot and acidic in her throat. "That you're psychopaths?" Message received. Ji-hoon laughed, a sound that should have been pleasant but instead sent ice down her spine. "No, baby. That you belong to us now. Both of us. Equally. And there's nowhere in this world you can run where we won't find you." Thandi looked between them, these identical strangers who'd somehow become her husbands, and felt her old life crumbling like sand between her fingers. 48 hours ago, she'd been Thandi Kumalo, 22-year-old waitress from Johannesburg, daughter to a man who loved her and a mother who'd died too young. Now she was something else entirely. Something owned. But if they thought she'd submit without a fight, they'd chosen the wrong South African woman. Let's rewind. Let's go back to the moment everything changed. To the instant Thandi's world split into before and after. 72 hours earlier, Thandi had walked into her tiny flat in Yeovil to find her uncle Saipho sitting across from 2 Korean men who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine or a nightmare. She couldn't decide which. "Thandi." Saipho's voice carried a weight that made her stop in the doorway, her waitress uniform still smelling of cooking oil and disappointed hopes. "Sit down, Ntombazana. We need to talk about your father." Her father. Mandla Kumalo, the man who'd raised her alone after Mama died, who worked 3 jobs to send her to university, who called her every Sunday without fail. Except he hadn't called in 3 weeks, and Saipho's expression said that wasn't going to change. "Where is he?" Thandi dropped her bag, suddenly cold despite Johannesburg's summer heat bleeding through the windows. "Hong Kong," one of the Korean men said, and his accent wrapped around the words like a caress and a threat. Or he was. "The ocean doesn't give back what it takes." The room tilted. Thandi gripped the doorframe. "What?" "Your father owed us 28 million rand," the other Korean man said, and his voice was identical to the first, down to the precise way he shaped each syllable. "Twins. They were twins. He gambled it away over 2 years. Then he tried to steal to pay us back. Then he ran. We found him 3 weeks ago," the first one continued. "He jumped from Victoria Harbour rather than face what he owed." Thandi's legs gave out. She hit the floor hard, but felt nothing except the enormous, yawning absence where her father should be. Dead. Baba was dead. And these men, these beautiful, terrifying men, were saying he'd been a gambler, a thief, a coward. "You're lying." But even as she said it, Thandi remembered. The phone calls Baba wouldn't let her hear. The way he'd started drinking, just a little at first, then more. The haunted look in his eyes the last time she'd seen him, 6 months ago, when he'd hugged her too tight and whispered, "I'm sorry, Ntombai Yami. I'm so sorry." "We don't lie," the second twin said. "We're Kim Min-jun and Kim Ji-hoon. And your father's debt became yours the moment he died." Saipho was crying silently, his weathered face wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. "I tried, Thandi. I tried to negotiate, to get them to take payments, anything. But the amount, it's impossible." "So what?" Thandi's voice sounded strange, distant. You're here to kill me? Do it. I have nothing anyway. We're not here to kill you, Min-jun said, and suddenly he was crouching before her, his face level with hers. Up close, she could see he had a small scar above his left eyebrow. The only thing that distinguished him from his brother. We're here to offer you a choice. What choice? Ji-hoon joined his brother, flanking her like wolves cornering prey. Marry us. Both of us. Become our wife, and the debt dies with your father. Thandi's laugh was ugly, broken. You're insane. We're powerful, Min-jun corrected. We're the heads of the Kim family organization in Seoul. We own shipping companies, real estate, politicians, police. We're untouchable. And we want you. Why? The question burst out before Thandi could stop it. Why me? You could have anyone. The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations that seemed to happen in the space between heartbeats. Then Ji-hoon smiled, and it transformed his face from handsome to devastating. Because 6 months ago, your father showed us your picture when he was begging for more time. And we both knew. Knew what? That you were ours, Min-jun said simply. That we'd never let you go. So we've been watching you, Thandi Kumalo. We know you take the same route to work every day. We know you're studying business management part-time. We know you sing when you think no one's listening, and you cry yourself to sleep every Thursday because that's when your mother died 7 years ago. Horror crawled up Thandi's spine with insect legs. You've been stalking me. We've been protecting you, Ji-hoon corrected. There are others your father owed. Worse people than us. They would have taken pieces of you and mailed them to his hideout as motivation. We made sure they never found you. So I should be grateful? Thandi's voice rose. I should thank you for turning me into property. You're not property. Min-jun's hand shot out, gripping her chin with gentle firmness, forcing her to meet his dark eyes. You're a wife. Our wife. There's a difference. I don't see it. You will, Ji-hoon promised. You have 1 hour to pack. Everything you need will be provided. Your uncle has already signed the papers. You're legally ours in 17 countries, including this one. Thandi looked at Saipho, betrayal sharp as knives. You signed? To save your life, he sobbed. They showed me pictures, Thandi. What the other creditors did to a man who owed them half as much. I couldn't let that happen to you. The twins stood in perfect synchronization, and Thandi was suddenly, viscerally aware of how much space they took up, how they seemed to fill the room with their presence. They were both easily 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and lean, moving with the kind of grace that suggested violence was always an option, just sleeping beneath their expensive suits. 1 hour, Min-jun repeated. Pack light. We'll buy you whatever you need in Seoul. And if I refuse? Thandi pushed herself up, using the wall for support. If I run? Ji-hoon's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. We'll find you. We always find what's ours. And next time, we won't ask nicely. So Thandi packed. What else could she do? She stuffed her life into 2 suitcases, clothes that suddenly seemed shabby, her mother's jewelry, her father's favorite shirt that still smelled like him, photographs and memories, and a future that had just been incinerated. Saipho helped, his hands shaking, whispering apologies she couldn't accept yet. The twins waited in the living room, speaking Korean in low tones, and Thandi caught words she recognized from her years of watching K-dramas. Wife. Home. Forever. Ours. The private jet was obscene. Thandi had never seen this kind of wealth, couldn't process the leather seats that probably cost more than her entire flat, the flight attendant who served them champagne in crystal glasses, the way the twins owned the space like they owned everything else absolutely and without question. They sat on either side of her, and Thandi felt like prey bracketed by apex predators. Drink, Ji-hoon offered her champagne. It'll help. Help with what? The kidnapping. The transition, Min-jun said, not looking up from his laptop where he was doing something that involved a lot of numbers and what looked like shipping routes. You're in shock. That's normal. Normal, Thandi repeated, the word tasting like ash. There's nothing normal about this. There will be. Ji-hoon's hand settled on her knee, Warm and possessive. Give it time. How much time? A lifetime. Because that's what you're asking for. Yes. Min-jun finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made Thandi's breath catch. That's exactly what we're asking for. What we're taking. Your lifetime, Thandi. Every day of it. Belonging to us. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. Something dangerous that recognized the hunger in their eyes and wondered what it would feel like to be devoured. The flight took 14 hours. Thandi slept fitfully, her head eventually falling onto Ji-hoon's shoulder while Min-jun worked tirelessly beside them. She woke once to find Ji-hoon stroking her hair with surprising gentleness, his expression unguarded in a way that made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Their eyes met, and he smiled. Almost home, he whispered, and Thandi's treacherous heart skipped. Seoul at midnight was neon and noise and a sensory assault that made Johannesburg seem quiet. The twins led her to a black Mercedes with windows so dark Thandi couldn't see inside until the door opened. The driver bowed, actually bowed, and suddenly Thandi understood. These men weren't just wealthy. They were royalty in their world. Dangerous royalty. The estate was in Gangnam, behind walls topped with sophisticated security and guards who nodded respectfully as the car passed. The house itself was modern, all glass and steel and clean lines, perched on a hillside with views of the glittering city below. Beautiful. Soulless. Welcome home, wife, Min-jun said as they entered, and the word echoed in the cavernous foyer. That's when Thandi tried to run. Stupid, desperate, but she couldn't help it. She bolted for the door they just entered, her hands scrabbling at the handle that wouldn't turn, wouldn't open, and then strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind, lifting her off her feet as she kicked and screamed. Shush, Ji-hoon's voice was in her ear, calm despite her struggling. You'll hurt yourself. Let me go. Never. Min-jun was suddenly in front of her, and his hand rose with something metallic and terrible. The gun. That's when he pressed it to her temple, and Thandi went very, very still. Which brings us back to where we started. To the moment Thandi understood exactly what kind of men she'd married, and what her life had become. If you're watching this and your heart is pounding, if you're angry or confused or desperate to know what happens next, hit that like button. Because Thandi's story is just beginning, and it's about to get so much worse before it gets better. If it gets better. After the gun, after Min-jun lowered it and Ji-hoon caught her trembling body, they carried Thandi to a bedroom that was clearly meant for her. No, not just her. For them. The bed was enormous, custom-made, easily big enough for 3 people. The implication made Thandi's stomach churn. This is our room, Ji-hoon explained gently, setting her on the bed's edge like she was something precious, something breakable. We all sleep here. No. Thandi's voice was hoarse. Absolutely not. It's not negotiable, Min-jun said, shrugging off his suit jacket with economical movements. You're our wife. Wives sleep with their husbands. I'm not your wife. I'm your prisoner. Ji-hoon knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees, his expression almost sad. You're both. For now. But the prisoner part will fade. The wife part is forever. You're insane. Both of you. Probably, Min-jun agreed, unbuttoning his shirt cuffs with fingers that moved with surgical precision. Our father was murdered when we were 19. We inherited an empire built on blood and bodies. Sanity is a luxury we couldn't afford. Thandi looked at them, really looked, and saw what she'd missed before. The hardness around their eyes, the scars on their knuckles, the way they moved like violence was a language they were fluent in. They were beautiful, yes. But the way a blade is beautiful. Sharp and deadly. I won't share a bed with you, she said, trying to sound firm even as her voice shook. Then sleep on the floor, Min-jun said with a shrug. But you're not leaving this room. The door locks from the outside. For your protection. My protection or your control? Both. Ji-hoon stood, and suddenly he was removing his shirt too, revealing a torso that looked carved from marble, defined and scarred in equal measure. We have enemies, Thandi. People who would love to know the Kim twins have a weakness. Until you understand how to protect yourself, until you're trained and ready, you stay where we can see you. Trained? The word snagged on something in Thandi's brain. What do you mean, trained? The twins exchanged one of their silent looks. Then Min-jun spoke, and his words changed everything. You're a Kim now. That means you learn to shoot, to fight, to survive. Because our world doesn't forgive weakness, and we won't let anyone hurt what's ours. Despite everything, the fear, the anger, the grief for her father and her stolen life, something in Thandi responded to that. To being claimed so absolutely. She'd spent her whole life feeling invisible, just another township girl trying to survive. These men saw her, wanted her, would burn the world to keep her. It was toxic, dangerous, everything she should run from. So why did some dark part of her want to lean in? That first night, Thandi did sleep on the floor. She made a nest of blankets as far from the bed as possible and curled into herself, trying to ignore the two men who watched her with expressions she couldn't read. Eventually, exhaustion won over fear, and she drifted into uneasy sleep. She woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and Ji-hoon's face inches from hers. He was lying on the floor beside her, fully dressed, looking at her with an intensity that should have been creepy but instead felt like being studied, memorized. "Morning, beautiful," he said softly. "You talk in your sleep." Thandi scrambled back, heart hammering. "What? What did I say?" "You called for your father. For your memoir." His expression gentled. "I'm sorry, Thandi. I'm sorry they're gone." "You're not sorry." Bitterness coated every word. "You're the reason. Your father made his choices." Min-jun's voice came from across the room. He was already dressed in another perfect suit, looking like he'd never slept at all. "We didn't force him to gamble. Didn't force him to steal. We just collected what he owed. His life. His daughter," Min-jun corrected. "Which is worth infinitely more. To us, at least." Ji-hoon sat up, offering Thandi his hand. She ignored it, pushing herself to standing without help. A mistake, because her legs had gone numb from sleeping on the hard floor, and she stumbled. Ji-hoon caught her with reflexes that seemed impossible, his arms banding around her waist, pulling her against his chest. "Stubborn," he murmured into her hair. "That's good. We like stubborn. Let go of me. Say please." Thandi's hands balled into fists. "Please let go before I knee you in the balls." Ji-hoon laughed, delighted, and released her. "See, Hyung. I told you she had fire. Fire we need to channel," Min-jun said, checking his watch. "Mrs. Park will be here in 10 minutes. She'll help you bathe and dress. We have breakfast with our mother at 9. "Your mother?" Horror washed over Thandi. "You want me to meet your mother?" "She wants to meet you. She's been waiting to meet our wife for years." "But I'm not." Thandi stopped. What was the point? These men lived in a reality she didn't understand, one where kidnapping and forced marriage were somehow acceptable. "Fine. Whatever." Mrs. Park turned out to be a Korean woman in her 60s with kind eyes and hands that moved with practiced efficiency. She led Thandi to a bathroom that was bigger than her entire Johannesburg flat, filled with marble and expensive toiletries and a tub deep enough to drown in. "They are good boys," Mrs. Park said in heavily accented English as she laid out clothes. "Scary, yes. But good. They take care of what is theirs." "I'm not theirs," Thandi insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Mrs. Park just smiled sadly. "Yes. You are. Better to accept fast. Life is easier." The bath was heaven, scalding hot and scented with oils that smelled like jasmine and something darker, more complex. Thandi soaked until her skin pruned, trying to wash away the last 72 hours. It didn't work. When she emerged, Mrs. Park had laid out a dress, expensive, designer, the kind of thing Thandi had only ever seen in magazines. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. They'd probably known her measurements before they ever spoke to her. The thought made her skin crawl and her pulse quicken in equal measure. The Kim matriarch was nothing like Thandi expected. Park Seo-yeon was tiny, elegant, with silver hair swept into a perfect chignon and eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Thandi across a breakfast table laden with both Korean and Western food, and her smile was measuring. "So," she said in perfect English, "my sons have finally brought home a bride. Against my will, Thandi shot back before she could stop herself. Min-jun tensed beside her. Ji-hoon's hand found her knee under the table, squeezing in warning. But Seoyun just laughed, a sound like wind chimes. I was 17 when I was married to their father. Also against my will. Also because of a debt. She sipped her tea delicately. I tried to poison him 3 times in the first year. Thandi blinked. What? Obviously I failed. But he respected the attempts. Said it showed spirit. Seoyun's eyes gleamed. These boys are their father's sons. They like women with fire. Women who fight back. I'm not trying to be what they like. I'm trying to survive. Same thing, the older woman said, then switched to Korean, speaking rapidly to her sons. They responded, and Thandi caught enough to understand they were discussing her like she wasn't there. Her training. Her protection. Her role. I speak Korean, Thandi said quietly in that language, and all 3 Kims went still. Not fluently. But enough. Ji-hoon's face split into a genuine smile. You're full of surprises, wife. Stop calling me that. Would you prefer a different endearment? Min-jun's voice was dry. Sweetheart. Darling. Prisoner. I'd prefer my freedom. Not an option, both twins said simultaneously, and the effect was eerie, unsettling. Seoyun studied Thandi with new interest. You're stronger than you look. That's good. You'll need to be. My son's world is dangerous. Their enemies would use you against them in ways you cannot imagine. Then let me go. I'll disappear. I won't be a weakness. Too late, Min-jun said flatly. The moment you became ours, you became a target. At least here, under our protection, you might survive. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a surreal haze. The twins kept Thandi close, suffocatingly close. They took her everywhere, one always at her back, one always watching. To meetings where men bowed and spoke in careful, respectful tones. To restaurants where entire floors were cleared for their privacy. To their legitimate businesses, shipping companies, real estate developments, tech startups, where everyone treated them like the royalty they were. And at night, back to that bedroom. Back to the bed she refused to sleep in and the floor she'd claimed as her territory. But something was shifting. Thandi felt it in the way Ji-hoon started leaving books on her nightstand, thrillers in English, Korean poetry with translations, romance novels that made her blush. In the way Min-jun appeared with her favorite South African foods, jollof rice and bobo thai and milk tart, researched and prepared perfectly. In the small kindnesses that accumulated like snow, building into something that might have been care if Thandi let herself believe it. On day 15, she woke to find both twins on the floor with her. They'd brought their pillows down, bracketing her sleeping form, and when she opened her eyes, both were watching her with identical expressions of something that might have been tenderness. Why? Thandi whispered. Why me? Ji-hoon reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Because the moment we saw your picture, saw your smile, we knew our search was over. Search for what? Someone brave enough to love us despite what we are, Min-jun said. Someone strong enough to survive our world. Someone beautiful enough to make us want to be better men. You kidnapped me. We saved you, Min-jun corrected. From a worse fate. From a life of looking over your shoulder. From men who would have done things to you that would make our methods seem gentle. That doesn't make it right. No, Ji-hoon agreed. But it makes it necessary. Thandi sat up, and they gave her space even though she could feel the effort it cost them. What do you want from me? Really? Everything, Min-jun said simply. Your days, your nights, your thoughts, your fear, your anger, your eventual love. We want all of you, Thandi Kumalo. And we're willing to wait until you give it freely. And if I never do, then we'll love you anyway, Ji-hoon said. Forever. Whether you love us back or not. It was the most terrifying thing anyone had ever said to her. And the most seductive. That night, Thandi made a choice. She climbed into the bed instead of making her nest on the floor. Both twins went very still, watching her like she was a wild animal that might bolt. She lay in the center of that massive mattress and waited. Stay on your sides, she said, voice shaking. Don't touch me. Okay, Ji-hoon agreed immediately, sliding in on her left. Whatever you need, Min-jun echoed, taking her right. They kept their word. Stayed on their sides, hands to themselves, but Thandi could feel the heat of them, the way they surrounded her without touching. She should have felt trapped. Instead, for the first time since her father died, she felt safe. She woke wrapped around Min-jun like a vine, her face buried in his chest, one leg thrown over his hip. Ji-hoon was spooned behind her, his arm draped over both of them, his breath warm on her neck. And the worst part, the truly terrifying part, was that Thandi didn't want to move. Min-jun's eyes opened, met hers. Something passed between them, hot and electric and too complicated to name. Morning, he said softly. Don't, Thandi whispered. Don't say anything. Wasn't going to. His hand came up slowly, cupping her face. Just going to enjoy this. It doesn't mean anything. Liar. But he smiled when he said it, and Ji-hoon's arm tightened around her waist, and Thandi realized she was in terrible, terrible danger. Not from them. From herself. From the part of her that was starting to imagine what it might be like to belong to the Kim twins not as a prisoner, but as a partner. As a wife in truth, not just on paper. Comment below if you think Thandi should give in or keep fighting. Because what happens next will change everything, and she's about to discover the twins have been keeping secrets that make her forced marriage look like the least of her problems. Training started on day 20. Min-jun woke Thandi at 5 in the morning, already dressed in athletic gear, his expression allowing no arguments. Get dressed. Comfortable clothes. We're going to the gym. I'm not training to be your soldier, Thandi grumbled, but she got up anyway, too aware of Ji-hoon's appreciative gaze as she stripped off her sleep shirt and pulled on the workout clothes that had mysteriously appeared in the closet that was now half hers. The gym was in the estate's basement, and it was less a gym and more an arsenal disguised as a fitness center. Weights, training dummies, weapons lockers, a shooting range. Min-jun led her to the mats and faced her with an expression she couldn't read. Hit me, he said. What? You're angry. I can see it. So hit me. Thandi's hands curled into fists. I'm not going to. Hit me, Thandi. Get it out. So she did. She swung at him with all the rage and grief and confusion of the past 3 weeks, and he caught her fist easily, redirecting the force with a move so smooth it looked like dancing. Then he swept her legs, and she hit the mat hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. Again, he commanded. She got up. Swung. Got dropped. Again. 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 By the time Ji-hoon arrived an hour later with water and towels, Thandi was soaked with sweat and covered in bruises, but something in her chest had loosened. The coiled spring of tension that had been choking her since Johannesburg had released just enough to let her breathe. Feel better? Min-jun asked, not even winded despite the workout. I hate you, Thandi panted. I know. But you feel better. He was right. She did. Training became routine. Every morning at 5, either Min-jun or Ji-hoon would take her through self-defense, through weapons training, through scenarios that made her understand exactly how dangerous their world was. And slowly, Thandi stopped being a victim. Started being something else. Something harder. On day 35, she successfully disarmed Ji-hoon during a drill. Held his own knife to his throat, breathing hard, adrenaline singing through her veins. Good, he said, pride clear in his voice. Again. But this time, I won't let you. She tried 15 more times. Failed 14. But that one success had shown her something important. She could fight back. Could survive. Could maybe, eventually, escape if she wanted to. Except she wasn't sure she wanted to anymore. That realization hit her on day 42, during a charity gala the twins insisted she attend. They'd dressed her in a gown that probably cost more than a year's rent, deep emerald green that made her dark skin glow. Diamonds at her throat and wrists, gifts from both men, heavy and cold and beautiful. You're stunning, Ji-hoon breathed when she emerged from the dressing room. You'll stop traffic, Min-jun added, his eyes dark with something that made Thandi's stomach flip. The gala was at a 5-star hotel, full of Korea's elite. Thandi drew stares, the twins' black wife, the African woman who'd somehow captured the Kim brothers. The whispers followed her like smoke, but the twins flanked her possessively, and no one dared approach. Until a man in an expensive suit cut through the crowd, his smile sharp. "The famous Kim bride," he said in English, his accent placing him as American educated. "Does she know what you did to her father?" Thandi's blood turned to ice. "What?" Ji-hoon's hand tightened on her waist, warning. Min-jun's expression went deadly cold. "Leave," Min-jun said quietly. "Now." But the man continued, his eyes locked on Thandi. "They didn't tell you? Mandla Kumalo didn't jump into Victoria Harbour. He was pushed. By the very men you're sleeping with." The ballroom seemed to tilt. Thandi wrenched away from Ji-hoon's grip, staring at the twins. "Is it true?" "Thandi," Min-jun started. "Is it true?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Thandi felt something inside her crack, a fissure that ran deep and kept spreading. "We need to talk," Min-jun said, reaching for her. "Not here. Don't touch me." Thandi's voice broke. "Don't you dare touch me." The man who'd delivered the news smiled, satisfied. "The Choi family sends their regards." Then he melted into the crowd, and Thandi was left standing in her beautiful gown with her beautiful, terrible husbands, feeling like her world was ending all over again. They didn't make it home. In the car, Thandi sat as far from them as possible, shaking with rage and grief. When they tried to explain, she screamed until her throat was raw, until they went silent and just let her shatter. At the estate, she locked herself in the bathroom. Heard them arguing in Korean through the door, Min-jun's voice sharp, Ji-hoon's pleading. She didn't care. Couldn't care. They'd killed her father. The men she'd been starting to care for, the men she'd let touch her, hold her, the men she'd been stupid enough to trust even a little, they'd murdered the only parent she had left. When she finally emerged hours later, eyes swollen and voice hoarse, both twins were waiting. They'd changed out of their tuxedos into comfortable clothes, and they looked as wrecked as she felt. "Tell me everything," Thandi said, her voice dead. "Or I swear to God, I'll find a way to kill both of you." Min-jun nodded slowly. "Okay. The truth. All of it." They sat, and he talked. Told her about how her father had gambled for years, always one more bet away from the big win. How he'd stolen from the Kim organization when he couldn't pay, thinking he'd never be caught. How he'd run when they came collecting. "We found him in Hong Kong," Min-jun said, his voice carefully neutral. "He was living in a shipping container, paranoid, barely eating. When we cornered him, he knew what was coming." "So you killed him," Thandi said flatly. "No." Ji-hoon leaned forward, desperate for her to understand. "He jumped. We were there, yes. We'd come to bring him back, to make him face what he owed. But when he saw us, when he realized there was no escape, he ran for the pier and he jumped before we could stop him." "You expect me to believe that?" "It's the truth," Min-jun said. "We didn't push him, Thandi. But we might as well have. Our presence, our threat, it drove him to jump. So yes, we're responsible. Just not in the way you think." Thandi wanted to not believe them. Wanted to hold on to her rage, her righteous fury. But something in their eyes, in the way they looked at her with naked grief and regret, made her pause. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were already broken," Ji-hoon said softly. "Because we wanted you to have a chance at happiness before the guilt destroyed you. Because we knew that if you learned the truth too soon, we'd lose you forever." "You've already lost me," Thandi whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. The betrayal burned, yes. The grief was suffocating. But underneath it all, something stubborn refused to let go of what they'd been building. "No," Min-jun said with quiet certainty. "We haven't. You're angry. You should be. But you haven't left. Haven't asked us to take you to the airport. Haven't demanded we let you go. Maybe I should. Maybe," Ji-hoon agreed. "But you won't. Because despite everything, you feel it too. This thing between us. This certainty." Thandi wanted to deny it. Couldn't. So instead, she asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the gala. "Who was that man? The one who told me?" The twins exchanged one of their looks, and Min-jun's jaw tightened. Choi Jae-sung. Second son of the Choi crime family. Our rivals for the past decade. Why would he tell me? To destabilize us, Min-jun said. To create division. The Choi family has been trying to undermine our operations for years. You're our weakness now, Thandi. They'll use you against us if they can. Then let me go. I won't be your weakness. Too late, Ji-hoon said, and there was something desperate in his voice now. They already know you exist. Already know we care. Letting you go would make you an easier target, not a safer one. So I'm trapped. You're protected, Min-jun corrected. There's a difference. Thandi laughed, ugly and broken. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, trapped and protected look pretty much the same. Neither twin had an answer for that. The next week was tense, strained. Thandi still slept in the bed, habit now, or maybe self-preservation, she wasn't sure, but she didn't let them touch her. Moved away when they got close. Flinched from gentle gestures. Watched them watch her with something like grief in their identical faces. Training continued, because what else was there? Min-jun pushed her harder now, as if punishing himself through her exertion. Ji-hoon brought her food she wouldn't eat, books she wouldn't read, and eventually stopped trying. On day 53, everything changed. Thandi was in the garden, a manicured space full of cherry trees and koi ponds that felt too peaceful for the turmoil in her chest, when Mrs. Park found her. Miss Thandi, the older woman said urgently. You must come. Now. There is danger. Before Thandi could ask what, the world exploded. The south wall of the estate erupted in fire and smoke. Alarms shrieked. Men in black tactical gear poured through the breach, weapons raised, and Thandi's training kicked in before her brain caught up. She ran toward the house, toward the twins, toward safety. Min-jun appeared from nowhere, grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. Stay with me. Don't let go of my hand. Ji-hoon materialized on her other side, a gun in his hand that he wielded with terrifying competence. Move. Now. They half-dragged her through the chaos, through rooms Thandi had never seen, down stairs that descended into a bunker she hadn't known existed. Behind them, gunfire echoed, sharp cracks that made her flinch with each report. What's happening? Thandi gasped as Min-jun shoved her into a reinforced room. The Choi family is making their move, he said grimly, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. They're after you. Me. They think we'll trade for you, Ji-hoon explained, his usual warmth completely absent. Think we'll give them territory, operations, anything to get you back if they take you. Will you? Both twins looked at her, and the answer in their eyes was immediate and absolute. Everything, Min-jun said. We'd give them everything. We'd burn our empire to ash, Ji-hoon added. If it meant keeping you safe. Thandi's throat closed. You're insane. Probably, Min-jun agreed. Stay here. The door is reinforced. They can't get through. We'll come back for you. No. Thandi grabbed his arm as he turned to leave. Don't go out there. Don't leave me. Something in Min-jun's expression softened. He cupped her face with one hand, thumb stroking her cheekbone. We have to. To protect you. To protect what's ours. I'll come back, Ji-hoon promised. We both will. Then they were gone, and Thandi was alone in a concrete box with the sound of warfare filtering through the walls, and all she could think was that she'd wasted 53 days being angry when she could have been learning to love them properly. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, drop a comment. Tell me if you think the twins will survive. Because this story is about to get so much darker before we see any light. The bunker had security monitors. Thandi found them after 20 minutes of pacing, of listening to gunfire and explosions and her own hammering heart. The screens showed her the estate under siege, men in black fighting men in the Kim family's colors, blood and bodies and violence that made her stomach heave. Then she found the screen showing the main house's great room, and her heart stopped. Min-jun and Ji-hoon fought back-to-back, surrounded by at least a dozen attackers. They moved like they were one organism split between two bodies, covering each other, anticipating movements, lethal and beautiful and outnumbered. Even as Thandi watched, Ji-hoon took a bullet to the shoulder, stumbled, and Min-jun roared something in Korean that needed no translation. Rage. Pure, incandescent rage. Thandi's hands fumbled with the bunker controls. There had to be a way out, a way to help, a way to do something other than watch the men she'd been fighting so hard not to love die on a security feed. The door wouldn't open. Emergency lockdown, the panel said in Korean and English. Cannot be overridden. No, Thandi whispered. Then louder, no. On the screen, Min-jun was fighting his way to his brother, and Ji-hoon was trying to rise, clutching his bleeding shoulder, and there were too many attackers, too many guns, and Thandi realized with crystal clarity that she was about to lose them. That she'd wasted her time with them being angry instead of grateful. That she'd never told them she was starting to understand. Starting to feel something that might have been love if she'd given it room to grow. The fighting lasted 37 minutes. Thandi counted every one, her eyes glued to the screens, watching the twins battle their way through the Choi assault with a combination of skill and sheer stubborn refusal to die. When the last attacker fell and Kim reinforcements finally breached the estate, Thandi was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The bunker door opened. Min-jun stood there, covered in blood, his and others, his expression wild. When he saw her, something in his face cracked. Thandi. She launched herself at him, and he caught her, stumbling back with the force of her desperate embrace. You're alive. You came back. You're alive. Told you we would, he said roughly, and his arms banded around her so tight it hurt, but she didn't care. She pressed her face to his chest and breathed him in, sweat and gunpowder and something underneath that was just him. Ji-hoon, she managed. Here. His voice came from behind her, pained but alive. I'm here, baby. Thandi pulled back enough to see him leaning against the doorframe, his shoulder wrapped in makeshift bandages, his face pale but his eyes bright. She moved to him carefully, afraid to jostle his injury, and touched his face with trembling fingers. You're hurt. I'll live. He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. Worth it. To keep you safe. You're both idiots, Thandi said, tears streaming down her face. Insane, reckless idiots. You're idiots, Min-jun corrected, pulling her back against him. Say it. What? Say you're ours. That you're staying. That you won't try to leave. Thandi looked between them, these two dangerous, impossible men who'd stolen her life and given her something else in return. Something she was only now beginning to understand. I'm yours, she whispered. God help me, I'm yours. They didn't let her out of their sight for the next week. Ji-hoon's shoulder healed slowly, and Min-jun was even more intense than usual, his eyes following Thandi constantly, as if reassuring himself she was real and safe and there. The estate was being rebuilt. The Choi casualties had been high, 17 dead, dozens arrested. The twins had provided evidence to federal authorities of Choi family activities, and the empire was crumbling from within. It's over, Min-jun told Thandi one night as they lay in bed, her between them as had become natural. The Choi family is done. For now, Ji-hoon added. There's always another threat. Another enemy. Then we deal with them, Thandi said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Together. Both twins went still. Then Min-jun rolled to face her, his expression unreadable. Together. I'm not going anywhere, Thandi said, and meant it. You were right. I can't leave. Not because you won't let me, but because I don't want to. Thandi, Ji-hoon's voice was thick. I'm not saying I forgive you. For my father, for the kidnapping, for everything. But I'm saying. I understand. And I'm choosing to stay. To see where this goes. It goes forever, Min-jun said fiercely. You need to understand that. Forever, Thandi. We're never letting you go. Good, she breathed, and kissed him. It was the first kiss she'd initiated. The first time she'd touched either of them with want instead of fear. Min-jun groaned against her mouth, his hands tangling in her hair, and Ji-hoon pressed against her back, his lips on her neck, and Thandi finally let herself fall. The next morning, she woke feeling different. Lighter. Like she'd been carrying a weight she'd finally set down. Both twins were watching her with identical expressions of wonder, and she couldn't help but smile. What? She asked. You're happy, Ji-hoon said, awe in his voice. "You're actually happy. Don't get used to it," Thandi warned, but she was smiling as she said it. "Too late," Min-jun said, pulling her close. "I'm memorizing this moment. This version of you. Happy and ours. Always was yours," Thandi admitted. "I just needed time to accept it." They made love that morning, all three of them, and it was nothing like Thandi had imagined. It was tender and fierce and overwhelming, the twins coordinating without speaking, both focused entirely on her pleasure, on her comfort, on making sure she knew exactly how wanted she was. Afterward, sprawled between them, Thandi felt something shift in her chest. Something that might have been the last of her resistance crumbling, might have been her heart finally accepting what her body had known for weeks. She was falling in love with both of them. Differently, but equally. Ji-hoon's warmth and humor and gentleness. Min-jun's intensity and protection and fierce loyalty. They were two halves of a whole, and she was the center that held them together. It should have been wrong. Probably was wrong by every conventional standard. But it felt right in a way Thandi couldn't deny anymore. 3 months became 6. 6 became 9. Thandi learned to navigate the twins' world, the legitimate businesses and the shadowy operations, the charity galas and the midnight meetings with dangerous men. She learned to shoot with accuracy that made Min-jun proud, to fight with skill that impressed Ji-hoon. She learned Korean fluently and started taking business classes online, determined to understand the empire she was now part of. And she fell deeper in love with every passing day. Until the morning she woke up nauseous. Thandi stared at the positive pregnancy test with numb fingers, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. Pregnant. She was pregnant. With a baby that could belong to either twin, because their DNA was identical, because there would be no way to know for certain. "Thandi." Ji-hoon's voice came from the bedroom. "You okay in there?" She opened the bathroom door slowly. Both twins were awake now, watching her with concern. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice strange to her own ears. "What's wrong?" Min-jun was on his feet instantly. "What happened?" Thandi held up the test. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Then chaos. Ji-hoon whooped and lifted her clean off her feet, spinning her until she laughed dizzily. Min-jun's expression did something complicated, shock, joy, fierce protectiveness all bleeding into each other, and then he was pulling them both into his arms, his face buried in Thandi's hair. "A baby," he said roughly. "You're having our baby." "But we won't know," Thandi started. "Don't care," Ji-hoon interrupted. "Ours. All 3 of ours. That's all that matters." "Ji-hoon's right," Min-jun agreed. "We don't need to know. We won't know. This baby will have 2 fathers, period." Tears streamed down Thandi's face. "You're sure?" "Never been more sure of anything," Min-jun said, and Ji-hoon nodded fiercely. The pregnancy was easy at first. The twins were attentive to the point of suffocation, arguing over every detail. Ji-hoon wanted natural birth, Min-jun wanted a scheduled C-section. Ji-hoon bought blue everything, Min-jun insisted it would be a girl. Thandi mostly watched them, amused and exasperated and so stupidly in love she could barely function. Until week 15, when everything went wrong. The letter appeared under their door like a snake sliding into paradise. Min-jun found it first, his expression going murderous as he read. "What?" Thandi asked, her hand instinctively going to her small baby bump. "What is it?" Choi Jae-sung's younger brother, Min-jun said, his voice deadly calm. "He was abroad during the raids. His back. And he knows about the baby." Thandi's blood turned to ice. "What does he want?" Ji-hoon took the letter from his brother, reading it with increasing fury. "Revenge. His threatening to take everything we love. Starting with our child." "No." The word tore from Thandi's throat. "He can't. We have to. We'll protect you," Min-jun interrupted, already pulling out his phone, barking orders in rapid Korean. "Both of you. Nothing touches our family." The estate went into lockdown again, but this time, Thandi wasn't a helpless victim. She trained with renewed intensity, her growing belly a constant reminder of what she had to protect. The twins were shadows at her heels, never more than 10 feet away, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Days became weeks. Weeks of suffocating security and mounting tension. Thandi could feel them fraying at the edges, the stress of constant vigilance wearing on all three of them. "This can't continue," she said on week 3. "I can barely breathe." "Better than the alternative," Min-jun said flatly. "Which is what? Living in fear forever? Raising our child in a fortress?" "If that's what it takes," Ji-hoon said, but there was despair in his voice. Thandi looked at them, these two men who'd turned her world upside down, who'd forced her into their lives and then made her want to stay, and made a decision. "Then we end it. Tonight. We draw him out and we end this." Both twins went very still. "Absolutely not," Min-jun said. "Not negotiable," Ji-hoon agreed. "I'm not asking permission," Thandi said calmly. "I'm telling you. We leak that I'll be at the charity hospital opening tomorrow. Minimal security. He'll have to strike." "It's too dangerous," Min-jun growled. "Living like this is dangerous. For me. For the baby." Thandi put her hands on her stomach. "I won't raise our child in a cage. Even a gilded one." The twins looked at each other, one of those silent conversations that seemed to happen in the space between heartbeats. Then Min-jun swore viciously in Korean. "Fine. But you stay in the car. Full security detail. And if anything goes wrong." "It won't," Thandi said with more confidence than she felt. The charity hospital opening was at a converted warehouse in Gangnam. Thandi rode in an armored car flanked by security vehicles, the twins on either side of her, their hands linked with hers, their tension palpable. "This is a bad idea," Ji-hoon muttered. "Terrible idea," Min-jun agreed. "It's the only idea," Thandi said. The event was crowded, full of Seoul's elite and press and photographers. The twins kept Thandi between them, their bodies a wall of protection, their eyes constantly moving. An hour passed. Then 2. Nothing. Thandi was starting to think they'd been wrong when the lights cut out. Chaos erupted instantly. Screaming, shoving, the sound of glass shattering. In the darkness, hands grabbed Thandi, trying to separate her from the twins. She fought, using everything they'd taught her, but there were too many, and then something hit her head and the world went grey at the edges. "Thandi." Min-jun's roar cut through the confusion. "We've got her." Ji-hoon's voice, desperate and furious. Then gunfire, sharp cracks that made Thandi's ears ring, and suddenly she was being dragged through a door, away from the twins, away from safety. She caught a glimpse of her captors, 3 men in black, professional, efficient. They shoved her into a van, and Thandi's training kicked in. She twisted, using her smaller size against them, getting her hand to the weapon strapped to her thigh. The gun felt heavy in her hand. She'd practiced 1,000 times, but practice was different from this, from actually pointing at a human being and pulling the trigger. She pulled the trigger. The man closest to her dropped with a scream. The others went for their weapons, and Thandi fired again, wild and desperate. She hit one in the leg, and he went down cursing. Then the van doors exploded inward, and Min-jun and Ji-hoon were there, their faces twisted with primal fury, and Thandi had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying in her life. What happened next was brutal and efficient. The twins moved like death itself, neutralizing the remaining captors with a combination of violence and precision that made Thandi understand exactly why they ruled Seoul's underworld. When it was over, when the men who tried to take her were unconscious or worse, Min-jun pulled Thandi into his arms so hard she couldn't breathe. "You're okay. You're okay. Tell me you're okay." "I'm okay," she gasped. "The baby is fine," Ji-hoon said, his hand on her stomach, his expression wild. "You're both fine. But if you ever scare us like that again." "You'll what?" Thandi managed a shaky smile. "Lock me in a tower? Don't tempt us," Min-jun growled. The aftermath was complicated. The Choi family's last assault had failed spectacularly. Choi Min-suk, the younger brother, was arrested along with his associates. Federal authorities, armed with evidence the twins had been collecting for months, dismantled what remained of the Choi empire. It was over. Really over. Back at the estate, Thandi stood in the nursery the twins had been preparing, one hand on her growing belly, and tried to process everything that had happened. "Hey." Ji-hoon's voice was soft as he entered. You okay? I killed someone tonight, Thandi said numbly. Maybe two someones. I shot them, and I didn't hesitate. Ji-hoon pulled her back against his chest, his chin resting on her head. I know. I'm sorry you had to do that. I'm not. Thandi's voice was steady. They were trying to take me from you. From us. I'd do it again. That's what terrifies me, Min-jun said from the doorway. That we've made you like us. Hard. Willing to do violence. No, Thandi turned to face them both. You've made me strong enough to protect what's mine. There's a difference. Is there? Ji-hoon asked quietly. Yes. Thandi took both their hands, placed them on her belly where their baby was growing. You saved me. You forced me into your world, yes. But you also showed me I could be more than I was. Braver. Fiercer. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. We'll always love you, Min-jun said roughly. Forever. Whether you want us to or not. I want you to, Thandi whispered. Both of you. Always. The baby came on a rainy Tuesday in April. 19 hours of labor with both twins coaching her through it, holding her hands, whispering encouragements in Korean and English. When the doctor finally placed their son in Thandi's arms, she looked at his tiny perfect face, Ji-hoon's smile, Min-jun's eyes, and felt her heart expand to hold a love so vast it hurt. Meet Mandla, she said, naming him for her father, for the man whose death had brought her here. Mandla Ji-hoon Kim. Both twins went very still. Then Min-jun's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother to hide, and Ji-hoon pressed his face to Thandi's shoulder, his body shaking with silent sobs. Thank you, Min-jun managed. For forgiving enough to give him that name. I'll never fully forgive, Thandi said honestly. But I understand. And I love you both too much to hold on to hate forever. They brought Mandla home 2 days later to an estate that had been transformed. Flowers everywhere, gifts from associates and rivals alike, security that was present but subtle. The twins had kept their promise, their world was dangerous, but they'd made it as safe as possible for their family. Life settled into a new rhythm. Night feedings and diaper changes and the twins arguing good-naturedly over who got to hold the baby more. Thandi watched them with Mandla and felt something in her chest expand even further. They were good fathers. Patient and gentle and fiercely protective. She should have known it was too perfect to last. The letter came on Mandla's 1-week birthday. Thandi found it when she went to get the mail, something she'd started doing as a small assertion of normalcy. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive, addressed to her in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it. Read it. Read it again. Then sank to the floor as her legs gave out. Min-jun found her there 10 minutes later, the letter still clutched in her shaking hand. Thandi. What? He grabbed the letter, scanned it, and his face went absolutely white. No. This isn't possible. What? Ji-hoon appeared, Mandla in his arms. What's wrong? Min-jun handed him the letter wordlessly. Ji-hoon read it, and all the color drained from his face too. It can't be, he whispered. Thandi looked up at them, these two men who'd become her entire world, and said the words that would change everything again. My father is alive. The letter was short. Precise. Written in English with a Johannesburg postmark. Dear Thandi, it began. I imagine my death has been reported to you. As you can see, those reports were premature. I've been watching you from afar, watching you build a life with the men who destroyed mine. I've stayed away to keep you safe. But now that you have a son, my grandson, it's time we talked. I'll be in Seoul next week. Alone. Unarmed. We have much to discuss. Your father, Mandla Kumalo. Thandi couldn't process it. Her father was alive. Had been alive this whole time while she'd grieved him, while she'd built a life with the men who'd claimed he was dead. Rage and joy and confusion warred in her chest until she couldn't breathe. He's been alive, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. All this time. You told me he was dead. We thought he was, Min-jun said, but his voice lacked conviction. Thandi's head snapped up. You thought. Or you lied. We saw him jump, Ji-hoon insisted. We saw him go into the water. We assumed. You assumed. Thandi stood, her body trembling with fury. You assumed, and you let me believe my father was dead. You let me grieve him. You built our entire relationship on that lie. Thandi, Min-jun reached for her. Don't touch me. She backed away, Mandler's cries from the other room barely registering. Don't you dare touch me right now. We need to talk about this, Ji-hoon said desperately. We need to figure out what this means, what he wants. What he wants? Thandi's laugh was ugly. He wants to meet his grandson. The grandson whose mother married his would-be killers. Can you imagine what that's like for him? What it's been like, watching from wherever he's been hiding? If he's been watching, he knows you're safe, Min-jun argued. He knows we protect you. He knows you forced me into a marriage I didn't want. That you stole me from my life. That everything we have is built on coercion and lies. Is that what you really think? Ji-hoon's voice broke. That everything we have means nothing? Thandi looked at him, at both of them, at these two impossible men who'd turned her world inside out. I don't know what I think anymore. I don't know what's real. She left them standing there and went to her son, picking up Mandler and holding him close, breathing in his new baby smell. Her father was alive. The man who'd raised her, who'd loved her, who she'd mourned, he was alive and coming to Seoul. And Thandi had no idea if that was a rescue or a disaster. She found out 1 week later when Mandler Kumalo walked into a cafe in Itaewon, and Thandi's heart stopped. He looked older. Thinner. There were streaks of grey in his hair that hadn't been there before, and his eyes held shadows that made Thandi want to weep. But he was alive. Her barber was alive. Ntombai Yami, he said softly, and Thandi broke. She ran to him, this man she'd thought she'd lost forever, and he caught her, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. Behind her, the twins watched with expressions she couldn't read, their hands close to concealed weapons, their bodies tense. I thought you were dead, Thandi gasped when she could speak. They said you jumped. They said you were gone. I did jump, Mandler said, his accent thick with emotion. I knew they'd kill me if they caught me. So I jumped, and I swam, and I disappeared. I've been in hiding ever since, watching you from afar, making sure you were safe. Safe? Thandi pulled back. I was sold to them, barber. Sold like property to pay your debt. Pain flashed across Mandler's face. I know, and I'm so sorry, Ntombazana. I tried to stop it. Tried to reach you, to warn you, but by the time I knew what Sifo had done, you were already gone. So why didn't you come for me? The question burst out before Thandi could stop it. Why did you let me think you were dead? Because I was afraid, Mandler admitted. Afraid that if I showed myself, I'd put you in more danger. Afraid that you'd choose them over me. Afraid that my daughter, my precious daughter, had fallen in love with the men who destroyed our family. Thandi's throat closed. Because he was right. She had fallen in love. Despite everything, despite the coercion and the lies and the violence, she'd fallen impossibly, irreversibly in love with both of them. I have, she whispered. I have fallen in love with them. Mandler's face crumpled. Thandi. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, she continued fiercely. You're my father. You'll always be my father. And I want you in my life. In Mandler's life. Mandler. Your grandson. Thandi gestured to where Min-jun held the baby, his expression carefully neutral. I named him after you. Something in Mandler's eyes softened, then hardened again as he looked at the twins. I need to speak with my daughter. Alone. No, Min-jun said flatly. She's my child. She's our wife, Ji-hoon interrupted. And we don't leave her alone with anyone. Especially not someone who's been hiding for 6 months, someone whose motives we don't understand. My motive is protecting my daughter. Then we have the same goal, Min-jun said coldly. Which means you have nothing to fear from our presence. The standoff lasted a small eternity. Then Thandi sighed. Barber, please. They're not going to leave. And honestly, I'm not sure I want them to. Hurt flashed across Mandler's face, but he nodded. They sat, Thandi between her father and her husband's, literally caught between two worlds. I want to know everything, Thandi said. Where you've been. Why you stayed away. What you want now. Mandler talked. Told her about swimming to shore that night in Hong Kong, about finding help from old friends, about making his way to Thailand and then Indonesia, always moving, always hiding. About the guilt that ate at him, knowing he'd left her to face the consequences of his mistakes. I gambled because I was trying to get enough money to pay for your mother's medical treatments, he said, and Thandi's breath caught. She was sick, Thandi. 4 months before she died. And I thought if I could just win enough, I could save her. But I kept losing, and she kept getting worse, and by the time she died, I owed so much I couldn't see a way out. So you kept gambling, Thandi said, numb. I kept trying to win it back. Stupid, I know. Desperate. And when I couldn't win, I stole. And when they came for me, I ran. Shame thick in his voice. I'm a coward, Ntombai Yami. I ran and left you to clean up my mess. You're not a coward, Thandi said, but her voice lacked conviction. You were desperate. Desperate men do terrible things, Min-jun said quietly. We know that better than most. Mandler looked at him, and something passed between them, understanding, maybe, or recognition. You've protected her. With our lives, Ji-hoon said simply. And you love her. More than anything, Min-jun said. Mandler's jaw worked. Both of you? Both of us, they said in unison. And my daughter loves you both. Thandi met her father's eyes. Yes, Baba. I do. The silence that followed was heavy. Then Mandler exhaled slowly. Then I suppose I should thank you. For keeping her safe. For loving her when I couldn't be there to do it myself. We don't want your thanks, Min-jun said. We want your cooperation. Because you being alive and in Seoul puts Thandi and Mandler at risk. How? Because our enemies will use you against us, Ji-hoon explained. We'll use you to get to Thandi. To our family. Then I'll leave. Disappear again. No. Thandi's voice was firm. You just came back. I'm not losing you again. Thandi. We'll protect you, Min-jun interrupted. Bring you into our organization, give you work, legitimize your presence. But you stay close. You stay where we can see you. Mandler bristled. I'm not joining your organization. Baba, Thandi said gently. They're right. You being here makes us all targets. But if you're part of the Kim family, under their protection, their enemies become yours and yours become theirs. It's the only way. Mandler looked at his daughter, really looked, and saw what the twins had seen months ago. She wasn't the girl he'd left behind. She was harder now. Stronger. A woman who'd survived being sold and had somehow turned her cage into a kingdom. You've changed, he said softly. I had to, Thandi replied. To survive. To thrive. To become who they needed me to be. And who's that? Thandi looked at the twins, then back at her father. A Kim. Dangerous. Protected. Free in ways I never was before. That's not freedom, Ntombai. Yes it is, Thandi interrupted. Just a different kind. I chose this, Baba. Eventually, I chose them. And I'd choose them again. The acceptance in her voice, the certainty, was what finally broke through Mandler's resistance. His daughter was lost to him in some ways, but she was alive. Safe. Loved. And maybe that was enough. Okay, he said finally. Okay. I'll do it your way. The next 3 months were strange, suspended. Mandler moved into a guest house on the estate, close enough for daily visits but separate enough for everyone to breathe. He and the twins circled each other warily at first, 3 predators assessing threat levels. But slowly, something shifted. Mandler saw how Min-jun and Ji-hoon were with Thandi, protective without being possessive, supportive without being controlling. How they balanced each other, one's intensity tempered by the other's warmth. How they loved his daughter in ways that were unconventional but undeniable. And the twins saw Mandler not as the man who'd ruined Thandi's life, but as the father who'd tried desperately to save his wife, who'd made terrible choices from love and desperation, who'd sacrificed everything including his own presence in his daughter's life to keep her safe. Understanding, if not forgiveness, grew between them. Thandi watched it happen and felt something in her chest ease. Her 2 worlds were merging, overlapping, becoming something new. On baby Mandler's 3-month birthday, they had a celebration. Small, intimate, just family. Thandi's father held his grandson and cried openly, whispering apologies in Xhosa and promises in English. The twins flanked them, protective and proud, and Thandi captured the moment in her memory, proof that even the most broken things could be made whole again. That night, as they lay in bed, all three of them, as had become their normal, Min-jun broke the comfortable silence. "We need to tell you something." Thandi's stomach dropped. "What?" "We've been transitioning our operations," Ji-hoon explained. "Moving away from the shadow businesses, into legitimate enterprises. It'll take years, but we're committed." "Why?" Thandi asked, though she thought she knew. "Because we have a son now," Min-jun said simply. "Because we want him to inherit an empire, not a criminal organization. Because you deserve better than constantly looking over your shoulder." Tears pricked Thandi's eyes. "You're doing this for me." "For all of us," Ji-hoon corrected. "For the family we're building." Thandi kissed them both, slow and deep, trying to communicate everything she felt, gratitude and love and the fierce determination to make their future worthy of this sacrifice. If you're still watching, if you've made it this far in Thandi's impossible, beautiful, complicated story, leave a comment telling me what you think. Because we're almost at the end, but there's one more twist. One more moment that will change everything. Life continued its strange new rhythm. Mandler integrated into the Kim organization, his business degree and sharp mind making him valuable in their legitimate operations. The twins' mother, Seo-yun, accepted Thandi's father with surprising grace, and the two elders formed an unlikely friendship bonded by shared grandchild adoration. Baby Mandler grew, hitting milestones that had all 4 adults crying happy tears. His first smile, his first laugh, the first time he reached for Thandi with clear intent. The twins argued good-naturedly over who he looked like more, but Thandi thought he looked like himself, a perfect blend of 2 gene pools, 2 families, 2 worlds. She should have known peace this perfect couldn't last. The call came on a Tuesday morning when Mandler was 6 months old. Min-jun's phone rang, and the expression that crossed his face made Thandi's blood freeze. "When?" he said sharply in Korean. "How many?" "Understood. Lock down everything. Now." He ended the call and looked at Ji-hoon. Another one of those silent conversations, this one full of tension and fear. "What?" Thandi demanded. "What's happened?" Choi Min-suk escaped during prison transport, Ji-hoon said, his voice carefully controlled. "He killed 3 guards. He's in the wind." The bottom dropped out of Thandi's world. "No. No, you said it was over. You said the Choi family was done." "We thought they were," Min-jun said grimly. "But Min-suk is smart. Patient. And he's been planning this for months." "Planning what?" "Revenge," Ji-hoon said simply. "He blames us for his family's fall. For his brother's death. He'll come for us. Then we run. We leave Seoul, go somewhere he can't find us." "There is nowhere he can't find us," Min-jun said flatly. "He has resources we didn't account for. Connections we didn't know about. Running would just make us easier targets." "So what do we do?" Thandi's hand instinctively went to her sleeping son's crib. "We prepare," Ji-hoon said. "And we end this. Permanently." The next week was a nightmare of preparation. The estate became a fortress again, but this time Thandi wasn't a helpless victim. She trained with renewed intensity, balancing her son on her hip while reviewing security protocols. Her father surprised everyone by revealing skills from his own complicated past. He'd done military service, knew strategy, understood warfare. "You never told me," Thandi said. Mandler's expression was haunted. "There were a lot of things I never told you, Ntombazana. Things I hoped you'd never need to know." The attack came on day 8, just before dawn. But this time, the Kim family was ready. Choi Min-suk brought 40 men. The Kim family had twice that, all positioned strategically, all waiting. When the Choi forces breached the outer wall, they walked into a trap. Thandi was in the reinforced safe room with her son, security monitors showing her everything. She watched the twins coordinate their defense with lethal efficiency, watched her father fight alongside them with a skill that spoke of practice and purpose, watched their people defend their home with the kind of loyalty that couldn't be bought. And she waited. 20 minutes into the assault, alarms screamed. Someone had found a secondary entrance, old service tunnels that shouldn't have existed on any plans. They're inside, security radioed. East wing. Heading toward the safe room. Thandi's blood turned to ice. She looked at baby Mandla, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos, and made a decision. She wasn't hiding anymore. Thandi strapped on body armor, checked her weapon, and did something the twins would never forgive. She initiated the safe room's interior lockdown sequence, sealing Mandla inside where nothing could reach him. Then she stepped out into the hallway, closing the impregnable door behind her. She heard them before she saw them, boots on marble, harsh breathing, weapons clicking. 3 men in black tactical gear rounded the corner and froze when they saw her. "You're her," the leader said in Korean. "The Kim twins' wife." "I am," Thandi said calmly, her weapon raised. "And you're trespassing." They lunged. Thandi fired. Her first shot took the leader in the leg. Her second caught the man on his right in the shoulder. The third charged her, and Thandi's training kicked in. She dropped, swept his legs, came up behind him with her gun pressed to his skull. "Where's Choi Minute-suk?" she demanded in Korean. The man laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "You'll find out soon enough." Then explosions rocked the estate. Not from outside, from within. Strategic demolitions meant to create chaos, to separate defenders, to make them vulnerable. Thandi's radio crackled. Ji-hoon's voice, desperate. "Thandi, where are you? Why aren't you in the safe room?" "Change of plans," she said, already moving. "Mandla's sealed inside. His safe. I'm coming to you." "Thandi, no." She switched off the radio and ran. She found them in the main hall, surrounded. Min-jun and Ji-hoon fought back to back, her father beside them, all 3 bleeding from various wounds but still standing. And across from them, Choi Minute-suk held a detonator. "Finally," he said when he saw Thandi. "The guest of honor." "Let them go," Thandi said, her weapon trained on him. "This is between your family and the Kims. I'm not part of this." "Aren't you?" Minute-suk's smile was terrible. "You're the center of it. The reason they're vulnerable. The weakness that will destroy them. I'm their strength," Thandi corrected, and shot him. Not to kill, she wasn't that person yet. The bullet caught his shoulder, knocked him back, sent the detonator flying. But before anyone could reach it, Choi's hand shot out, fingers closing around the device. "If I die," he gasped, blood streaming from his wound, "we all die. This place is wired to explode." "Then you die too," Minute-jun said coldly. "I'm already dead. My family is destroyed. My brother is gone. This is all I have left, taking you with me." Thandi's mind raced. The safe room was at the center of the estate, reinforced, designed to survive anything. Mandla was safe. But everyone else, her father, the twins, the staff, their people, would die. "Wait," she said, stepping forward. "I'll give you what you want." "Thandi, no," Ji-hoon growled. "What do you want?" she asked Minute-suk, ignoring the twins. "Really want?" Minute-suk's eyes were feverish. "I want them to know what loss feels like. To lose everything like they took everything from me." "Then take me," Thandi said. "Let everyone else go. Take me and kill me, and let them live with that loss." "Thandi," both twins roared. "Be quiet," she snapped at them, never taking her eyes off Minute-suk. "You want them to suffer? Make them watch me die. That's the cruelest thing you could do." Minute-suk considered, his finger hovering over the detonator's button. "You'd trade yourself? For them? For everyone here?" "Yes." "Don't listen to her," Minute-jun snarled. "She's lying. She'll fight you the second you let us go." "Will I?" Thandi looked at the twins, and let them see the truth in her eyes. She would trade herself. For them. For Mandla. For the life they'd built together. "I love you. Both of you. But our son needs at least one parent. Choose each other. Choose him. Let me go." "Never," Ji-hoon's voice broke. "We'll never let you go. You don't have a choice," Thandi said gently. Then to Minute-suk, Do we have a deal? Before Min-suk could answer, before anyone could move, Mandla Kumalo did something that would haunt Thandi's dreams. He charged. Her father, the man who'd run from the Kims, who'd jumped off a pier rather than face them, who'd hidden for months, launched himself at Choi Min-suk with a roar that shook the rafters. He hit the other man like a freight train, driving him backward, his hands closing around Min-suk's wrist, around the detonator. Run! Mandla screamed at Thandi. Get out! Get to your son! Everything happened in slow motion and far too fast. The twins grabbed Thandi, dragging her backward. Min-suk and Mandla struggled, the detonator between them like a serpent waiting to strike. Then Min-suk's finger found the button. Alibaba! Thandi's scream tore from her throat. The explosion was massive, consuming. The main hall collapsed in flame and debris, and Thandi's world ended for the second time. When the dust cleared, when the fires were extinguished, when the bodies were counted, Mandla Kumalo was among the dead. So was Choi Min-suk. The Choi threat ended permanently, sealed by the sacrifice of a man who'd spent months trying to atone for his mistakes. Thandi didn't cry at first. Couldn't. She held her son and stared at nothing while the twins arranged funerals, dealt with authorities, began the process of rebuilding. Again. It was Ji-hoon who finally broke through her shock, 3 days after the attack. He took Mandla from her arms gently, handed him to Min-jun, and pulled Thandi close. Breathe, he whispered. You have to breathe, baby. He saved us, Thandi said numbly. My father saved us. I know. I was going to trade myself. I was going to let him kill me. I know, Ji-hoon said again. And we would never have survived it. Your father knew that. He chose to protect all of us. By dying. By being brave. Finally. Min-jun's voice was rough. He died a hero, Thandi. He redeemed everything. Thandi looked at them, these two impossible men who'd stolen her life and given her a new one, and finally let herself fall apart. She cried for her father, for the years they'd lost, for the future he'd never see. She cried for herself, for the girl from Johannesburg who'd been sold into marriage and had somehow found love in captivity. And she cried for the certainty that this cycle would never truly end. That their world was violence and danger and constant vigilance, and she'd chosen to stay in it. Chosen to raise her son in it. I'm tired, she whispered when she could speak again. I'm so tired of fighting. Then rest, Min-jun said, gathering both her and their son close. We'll fight for you. We'll always fight for you, Ji-hoon promised. So Thandi rested. And mourned. And slowly began to piece herself back together. Mandla Kumalo's funeral was huge. The Kim family spared no expense, and people came from across South Africa and Seoul, friends, associates, people who'd known him before his fall and after. They buried him with full honors, and Thandi stood between her husbands with her son in her arms and said goodbye to her father for the second and final time. Seoyun spoke at the service, her words honoring the man who'd sacrificed himself for her sons. He came to us as an enemy, she said in clear English and Korean. He died as family. There is no greater redemption. 6 months passed. Then a year. Baby Mandla grew, learned to walk, said his first words, Appa for both twins, refusing to differentiate. The estate was rebuilt, stronger than before. The Kim Empire continued its transition toward legitimacy, slowly shedding its criminal skin. And Thandi learned to live with the scars. Physical ones from the battles she'd fought, and emotional ones from the father she'd lost twice. She threw herself into business school, determined to understand the empire she was now part of. Started sitting in on meetings, offering opinions, becoming not just the twins' wife but their partner in truth. They loved her through it all. Patiently. Fiercely. Min-jun teaching her strategy and numbers, Ji-hoon showing her the human side of business, both of them supporting her evolution from victim to survivor to leader. On the second anniversary of her father's death, Thandi stood at his grave with her son, no longer a baby but a toddler, walking and talking and brilliant, and made him a promise. I'll make sure he knows you, she said to the headstone. I'll tell him about your mistakes and your redemption. About how you loved Mama enough to destroy yourself trying to save her. About how you loved me enough to die protecting my family. He'll know who his grandfather was. Little Mandler put his chubby hand on the gravestone, as if understanding. Go-go, he said solemnly, his word for grandfather. Thandi's heart cracked and mended simultaneously. That night, in the bed she shared with the twins, Thandi made an announcement. I'm pregnant again. Both men went very still. Then chaos, joy and celebration and fierce protectiveness that made Thandi laugh and cry in equal measure. Another baby, Ji-hoon breathed. Another miracle. Are you happy? Min-jun asked, his hand already on her still flat stomach. Yes, Thandi said, and meant it. Terrified, but happy. We'll protect you both, Min-jun promised. All of you, Ji-hoon corrected. Our growing family. And they did. The second pregnancy was easier than the first, the twins even more attentive if that was possible. They'd learned from the first time, knew how to balance protectiveness with freedom, how to make Thandi feel safe without suffocating her. 8 months later, Thandi gave birth to a daughter. They named her Naledi, star in Sesotho, because she'd brought light to a family still healing from darkness. Life became beautifully, chaotically normal. 2 children, 3 parents, 1 unconventional family that somehow worked. Mandler started preschool and came home with drawings of his family, always 3 tall figures surrounding 2 smaller ones, everyone smiling. Is that normal? Thandi asked Mrs. Park one day, showing her the latest artwork. For a child to be so well adjusted with 2 fathers? Mrs. Park smiled. Normal is what you make it, dear. Your boys are loved. That's all that matters. On a quiet Sunday morning when Mandler was 4 and Naledi was 18 months, Thandi stood in the kitchen watching her family. The twins were on the floor with the children, building an elaborate block tower that Naledi kept gleefully destroying. Mandler was explaining the architectural principles his fathers had taught him, his little face serious. The twins were laughing, encouraging, completely absorbed in their children. Seoyun appeared beside Thandi, 2 cups of tea in her hands. They're good fathers. They are, Thandi agreed. Are you happy, daughter? The older woman had started calling her that a year ago, and it always made Thandi's throat tight. Yes, Thandi said. I am. Even knowing how it started. Even with all the pain and loss. Thandi considered, watching her impossible family. I regret the circumstances. The force. The lies. But I can't regret what we've built. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you human, Seoyun said gently. Love isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's born from terrible things. But it's still love. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Thandi lay between Min-jun and Ji-hoon and said the words she'd been holding for months. I forgive you. Both men went very still. For everything, Thandi continued. For forcing me into this marriage. For the lies about my father. For bringing me into your dangerous world. I forgive you. Thandi, Ji-hoon's voice was thick. I need you to hear this, she interrupted. I forgive you because I love you. Because despite everything, you've given me a life I could never have imagined. You've made me stronger. You've loved me when I couldn't love myself. You've given me 2 beautiful children and a family I'd fight to protect. So yes, I forgive you. Min-jun's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed. We don't deserve you. Probably not, Thandi agreed. But you have me anyway. Forever. Both of you. Forever, they echoed, and Thandi felt the last piece of her heart that had been holding back click into place. She was theirs. Completely. Finally. Not because she had to be, but because she chose to be. And that made all the difference. 3 years later, Thandi sat in the boardroom of Kim Enterprises, now fully legitimate, their shadow operations a distant memory, and led a meeting about expansion into African markets. She spoke with authority born of education and experience, and the men around the table listened with respect. After, Min-jun and Ji-hoon cornered her in her office. You're incredible, Ji-hoon said, pulling her close. You ran that meeting like you were born to it, Min-jun added. Thandi smiled. Maybe I was. Just took me a while to figure it out. That evening, they picked up their children from school together, Mandler now 7, Naledi 4, and their youngest, a son they'd named Saifo after Thandi's uncle who died of natural causes the previous year. The family walked through Gangnam, the twins flanking Thandi, children between them, looking like any other prosperous Seoul family. Except they weren't. They were something unique. Something impossible. Something that worked despite all logic saying it shouldn't. At home, after dinner and bath time and stories, after the children were tucked into bed and the house was settling into silence, Thandi stood on the balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering lights. The twins joined her, one on each side, and they stood in comfortable silence. "Do you ever regret it?" Ji-hoon asked softly. "Staying?" Thandi considered. "Sometimes I wonder who I would have been if my father hadn't owed you money. If I'd stayed in Johannesburg, finished university, lived a normal life. And?" Min-jun prompted. "And I think that woman would have been smaller," Thandi said. "Safer, maybe. But smaller. You forced me to grow, to evolve, to become more than I was. I hate how it happened. But I love who I became." "We love who you became too," Ji-hoon said. "We love who you always were," Min-jun corrected. "We just gave you space to show it." Thandi leaned into them, these two men who destroyed her life and rebuilt it into something better, and felt peace settle over her like a blanket. "I love you," she said. "Both of you. Differently, but completely." "We know," they said in unison, and the echo of their synchronicity made her smile. This was her life now. Her choice. Her family. Unconventional. Complicated. Perfect in its imperfection. And she wouldn't change it for anything. But as Thandi stood there between her husbands, watching Seoul's lights blur into stars, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it, expecting spam. Instead, she found a single sentence in Korean, followed by a photograph that made her blood turn to ice. "Your uncle's death wasn't natural. And I know who killed him." The photo showed Saifo's grave. And standing beside it, a woman Thandi had never seen before. A woman who looked exactly like Ji-hoon and Min-jun. The twins had mentioned their sister once, years ago. Said she'd died in the attack that killed their father. Apparently, she'd lied. Thandi's hands shook as she showed them the message. Both men went deadly still, their faces draining of color. "That's impossible," Ji-hoon whispered. "Sujin died," Min-jun said flatly. "We buried her." "Then who is this?" Thandi demanded, fear making her voice sharp. Another text arrived. "I'm coming home, brothers. And we need to talk about the lies you've told your wife. About what really happened to her family. About what's buried in the past that won't stay buried." Min-jun's jaw clenched. Ji-hoon's fists balled at his sides. And Thandi realized with sinking certainty that their peace had been temporary. That the twins had more secrets, more lies, more dangerous truths waiting to explode. "Tell me," she said quietly, deadly calm. "Tell me right now what else you've lied about." "Thandi," Min-jun started. "Now." They looked at each other, then back at her, and Thandi saw something in their eyes she hadn't seen in years. "Fear." "Our sister didn't die in the attack on our father," Ji-hoon said finally. "She orchestrated it." The world tilted. Thandi gripped the balcony railing to keep from falling. "What?" "She wanted the empire," Min-jun explained, his voice hollow. "Was willing to kill our father to get it. We stopped her, exiled her, told everyone she'd died. We thought she'd never come back. And my uncle?" Thandi's voice was barely above a whisper. "We don't know," Ji-hoon said. "But if Sujin's back, if she's making contact, nothing good comes from this." Thandi looked at them, these two men she'd built a life with, who she'd forgiven for so much, and felt the foundation of her world crack again. "How many more secrets?" she asked. "How many more lies am I going to discover?" "No more," Min-jun swore. "This is the last one. You said that about my father." Neither had an answer. Thandi's phone buzzed again. Another message from the mysterious sister. "I'll be at your estate tomorrow at noon. Alone. Unarmed. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice. But the truth is coming out either way. And when it does, your perfect little family is going to shatter. Tell the twins their sister sends her love." Thandi looked at her husbands, her complicated, dangerous, lying husbands, and made a decision. "She's coming tomorrow," Thandi said. And we're going to hear what she has to say. Thandi, she's dangerous. So am I, Thandi interrupted. You made me that way, remember? You taught me to fight, to survive, to protect my family. So that's what I'm going to do. She walked inside, leaving them on the balcony, and went to check on her sleeping children. Mandla and Naledi and little Saipho, innocent and beautiful and completely unaware that their world was about to change again. Thandi kissed each of their foreheads and made a silent promise. Whatever truths came to light tomorrow, whatever lies were exposed, she would protect them. Would protect her family. Even if it meant going to war with the twins' own sister. Even if it meant discovering that everything she thought she knew about her life was built on more lies than she'd imagined. Because that's what mothers do. What wives do. What survivors do. They fight. And Thandi Kumalo Kim had learned from the best how to be ruthless when necessary. How to protect what was hers. Tomorrow, when the twin sister arrived with her truths and her threats and her secrets, she would find out exactly how fierce the Kim matriarch had become. Thandi returned to the balcony where Min-jun and Ji-hoon still stood, frozen in their guilt and fear. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said quietly, whatever she reveals, we face it together. As a family. But I need you to understand something. What? Min-jun asked. If I find out you've lied about anything else, anything that puts our children at risk, I will take them and disappear. And you will never find us. Not because I don't love you. But because love isn't enough when trust is broken. We understand, Ji-hoon said, his voice raw. Good. Thandi headed for the door, then paused. And tomorrow? We record everything. Because if your sister is half as dangerous as you seem to think, I want proof of every word she says. Evidence we can use to protect ourselves. The twins nodded, and Thandi saw something in their expressions that looked like pride mixed with fear. They'd created a monster, teaching her to think like them. To plan like them. To be as ruthless as they were when necessary. And now they were about to reap what they'd sown. Thandi went to bed alone that night, needing space to process everything. The twins didn't follow, understanding that this breach, this new revelation of lies, required careful handling. As she lay in the darkness, Thandi thought about the girl she'd been 4 years ago. Sold into marriage, terrified, helpless. That girl would have collapsed under the weight of this new betrayal. But Thandi wasn't that girl anymore. She was a mother. A wife. A businesswoman. A survivor. And tomorrow, she would prove exactly how much she'd learned from living in the Kim family's dangerous world. Her phone buzzed one final time. The unknown number again. Sleep well, sister-in-law. Tomorrow changes everything. Thandi smiled in the darkness, cold and certain. Yes, she whispered to herself. It does. If you've made it this far, you're part of Thandi's story now. Drop a comment predicting what the twins' sister knows. What secrets are about to explode? Who really killed Uncle Saipho? Because part 2 of this story is coming soon, and nothing will prepare you for what happens when the Kim family's past refuses to stay buried. Hit that subscribe button if you want to know what happens when the twin sister arrives. When the lies come to light. When Thandi has to choose between the love she's built and the truth she deserves. This story isn't over. It's only just beginning.